But now we're on Daf Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Beis, and the Gemara is saying Trey Miute Ksive, meaning we're going to have to suggest that according to the Madiyoma that holds Shnei Ksum Avom Ke'echad Melamdim, we have to find specific miutim to exclude. Let's say we'll take Egla Rufa, for example, right? So in the case of Trumas Hadesh, the Torah says that after the Kohen is Merim the Deshen, he's got to put it for some Eitzel Mizbeach and Hosam Ksiv. And there in the Parsha of Egla Rufa, again, we have a specific pasuk which teaches me that there's an Isur even after Naseis Mitzvaso, Ksiv Ha'arufa. Now, exactly how you derive anything from Ha'arufa, the Hey, is not so clear to me. The Hey, he says here, is expounded to restrict the stringency related to this. Oh, I see. I think what's going on is the following. That Visamo means it, right? It doesn't say Visam, it adds a Vav at the end. And that's a mute. That's telling me that here, in the case of Trumas Hadeshen, you have an Isur Me'ila even after Nas Mitzvaso. And in the case of Egla Rufa, the Torah adds the Hey of Harufa to tell me Dafka, in this case of the Egla, there's an Isur Me'ila even after the mitzvah was completed. And that's coming to exclude any other case. For example, the dam after Zrika and there's leftover dam and it was already Nasis Mitzvaso, there's no Me'ila. Oh, now the Gemara asks a slightly different question with regard to dam. We had this pasuk a number of times. Let's read it again. Ki nefesh habasar badamhu ani nesati l'chem ezberach l'chaper l'sheh ki damhu v'nefesh yichaper. And we find the word dam repeats itself 3 times. Tlasa kroy lamali bedam. And the Gemara says chad lemute nosar, chad lemute me'ila, chad lemute mituma. Now the question is, all right, so now we know the dam is excluded from nosar. We know the dam is excluded from me'ila, and the dam is excluded from a tameh who eats the dam. But wait a second. We had pigul. So the Gemara says, "Aval pigul lo tzarich kra." There's no need to exclude dam from the Isur pigul. Why? Tisnan, because we have a Mishnah in Zvachim, Madaf Mem Gimel. It says Kol sheyesh lo matirin. That pigul only applies if there's a matir and a nitar. Okay, for that we have to learn a parak in Zvachim. I remember when we learned this, it was very complicated. But anyway, bein le'odem bein le'mizbeach chayav lo mishum pigul. The dam gufe matir. So in other words, if something is a nitar, then it's subject to me'ila. But that which is in itself the matir is not subject to. I mentioned me'ila. I'm sorry. I meant pigul. Hadran alecha kol abasa. Okay, now we start a chapter, which is the 9th chapter of Chullin, and it deals with taharos. What what aspects of taros? We're talking about tumas ochlin and tumas nevela. Now, in the case of tumas ochlin, in order for an ochel to convey tuma, the ochel has to have the shear of kibetza. In the case of tumas nevela, the nevela, in order to convey tuma to something else, would have to have a kizayis. So our Mishnah, at the very beginning of this parak, which is called the Arva Rotev, has a list of what's called well, actually, I shouldn't call it shomrim because some of them are shomrim, they're not all shomrim. But let's go through it. Ha'or, that's one of the shomrim, the hide. Rotev, that's not a shomer. Gravy. Now, we're not sure what elul is, but kippah is sediments. That has nothing to do with shomer. But atzamos might be a shomer. Gidin, karnayim, tlufim. I mean, none of these are really ochlim. So they really could not, in and of themselves, be mashlim the shear of kibetza in order to convey tumas ochlim. But yet the Mishnah says that mitztarfin l'tami tumas ochlim. And the Gemara is going to have to figure out why that which is not an ochel could somehow be mashlim the shear of kibetza for the purpose of tumas ochlin. Avalo tumas nevelos. But as far as the kizayis of tumas nevela, which is necessary as a volume in order to convey tuma through nevela, then none of the above can be integrated with basar of nevela to create a kizayis. And immediately the Gemara is going to pick this up. But first, let's do the last part of the Mishnah. Kayotze bo, hashoche behemet meil liove kol chavim. Now, this is a fascinating halacha that a behemet meya, a non-kosher animal, doesn't have shechita. In the case of a kosher animal, maybe even if it's treifa, we said that there is shechita to be metar b'nei nevela. But now we're talking about a non-kosher animal. And it's a pella, because the shechita, again, if a Jew does the shechita of an animal that's owned by a guy, and the animal is a non-kosher animal, then the shechita is significant or operative to remove tumas nevela. Let me just see if he mentions this, just to make sure I'm not. Oh, so the shechita of the Jew in an animal of an akum is significant to generate a shem ochel. Who's going to eat it? The answer is the guy is going to eat it. And again, if you shoot the animal with a gun without shechita, then the basar is not an ochel. But if the Jew shechts it, the shechita of the Jew generates a shem ochel. But only at the point where the animal is dead. So if the animal dies as a result of the shechita of a Jew, then it generates a shem ochel. But now the Mishnah talks about a case of mefarcheses. Wait a minute, I have to add one more point. Why is the shechita of a Jew effective and meaningful in a non-kosher animal? The answer is it's effective for the guy. Why is it effective for the guy? Because shchita removes Ever Menachai. Ever Menachai is one of the 7 mitzvahs, Noachide mitzvahs. So the guy is not allowed to eat the animal as long as it's alive. And the shchita is meaningful now to remove the Iser Ever Menachai. So again, the mechanism here is very abstract, very complicated. If it would have been a kosher animal, then that shechita would have made it an ochel for Jews. And therefore, when the Jew shechts the animal, that same shechita in a non-kosher animal is to designate it as ochel for the guy, and therefore generates the shem ochel. But that's only after the animal's dead. Why? Because as long as the animal's alive, then it's Ever Menachai. So that parallel between the shechita of a Jew for a Jew and a kosher animal, which sets up a shema ochel, and the shechita of a Jew for a guy, which makes it an ochel for a guy, falls apart if the animal is still mefarcheses. How do you translate convulsing? Convulsing? Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah. Why? Because even though for a Jew, convulsing is meaningless. The animal's dead with shechita. I don't care if if the animal dances, the hora, it wouldn't make any difference. But for a guy, it still remains Ever Menachai as long as it's farcheses. So therefore, the shechita of the Jew would not create a shema ochel for the guy, because the guy is not allowed to eat it. Mitame tumas ochlin, avalo tumas nevela. Just 1 second. All right. I mean, again, we'll have to come back to this again. I just want to finish the daf. So he says, Ad shetomus or ad sheyatiz es rosha. Now, there's another part of the Mishnah here that the Mefarshim don't know exactly what the Mishnah wants to tell me here. Riba l'tami tumas ochla mimasha riba l'tami tumas nevela. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Elul hamachunas. Again, we're not sure exactly what Elul is. We had that already early in the Mishnah. Let's just see. He says shreds of meat that are shaved by the knife and remain attached to the hide when one flays the animal. So it's shaved shreds. That's called Elul. Hamachunas. Somehow he gathered them together, and im yeshbo kazais b'makom echad, if as a result of gathering together these shreds of meat that are attached to the hide, then he's got a kazayis. Is im yeshbo kazais b'makom echad chayav alav. So I'm not sure what the word chayav means here, because I think we're talking about tumah. Let's just 1 second. A person who touches or carries a kizayis of nevel becomes contaminated. And then if he the word chayav means that if after he came in contact with this kizayis of nevel, then he went into the migdash or he ate kodesh, and if it was unintentional, it was shogeg, then he's got to bring a korban chatas. If it was done bebezid, he's chayav kares. Okay, Tmina lahad etana rabbana. Now, again, in our Mishnah, we have something called shomrin, right? So let's give the classic example is the or, right? The hide is a shomer. right? Shomer means it protects the meat of the animal, right? And we said that a shomer, like the hide, will be mitzaref to the kibetza for conveying tumas ochlim. So Tanina lahadutana rabbanon shomrim l'tumakal. Now the word tumakala is a reference to ochlim. Again, we have to see how nevela could be matame other v'kelim, whereas ochlin is only matame other ochlin, and so forth and so on. So the phrase tumakala means relative to nevela. Ochlin is a tumakala. It's a very limited kind of tuma. And shomrim, like the hide, are mitztaref to the kibetza for tumakala, meaning for ochlin, tumas ochlin, v'lo shomrim letumachamura. Right? If we go back to our Mishnah, the Mishnah says that avalo tumas nevela, right? Avalo tumas nevelos. So the Gemara wants to ask, Shomrim l'tuma kalaminolan. Let's go back to the basics. How do you know that the hides could be included in the kibetza to generate a tumas ochlin? The Tana Devei Rabbi Shmuel, al kol zera zarua asher yizorea. Okay, so the key word here is yizorea in this pasuk. Let's translate the pasuk. It says, and if its carcass, so we're talking about nevela that falls on a plant or on seeds. So the Torah says if the carcass will fall upon any seed of a seed plant that is sown, and that's a pasuk in Vayikra Perek Yud Gimel, and we're talking about the tomb of a sheretz. The carcass of a sheretz falls on seeds, and these seeds are edible seeds. The seeds remain tahor. But that's what it says in that pasuk. Of I'll call Zera Zarua. Let me just see if he quotes the whole pasuk. V'chiyipol minivlosam I'll call Zera Zarua sheizar tahar hu. The Torah goes out of its way to tell you that the seeds upon which the carcass of the sheretz fell are tahar. That's in that pasuk. So I don't have the next pasuk here, but then it says ki yomas min behema sher ulachem liochlan ogeh benivlosa yitma orev. So again, I don't have that next pasuk in front of me now. I'm in an apartment here that doesn't have svarim, but in any event, so the next pasuk says that if kiipol, I wish I could remember the pasuk by heart, but kiipol mayim al zora. If you happen to have a chumash vayikra in front of you, I don't have access to that. Anybody have a chumash vayikra like handy? I mean, we have to end, but we just do that last thing.
It says, "Ki yipo minivlatam al kol zera zarua asher yizorea tahor."
And what's the next pasuk?
V'chi amut min habeimash asher hilachem le'achla hanogea benivlata yitma adhara.
Wait a minute. Isn't there one pasuk in between there?
There might be. This is what's on the side of my Gemara, so I don't know what. I didn't take out a chumash.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was reading. That's why I was asking if you have a chumash, because the two psukim in the Torah are on the side of the Gemara are pasuk 37 and 39. I need pasuk 38.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's 38 in Vayikra Yud Aleph. in chapter 11 of Leviticus. It should say the word mayim. Steve, you have a chumash there? I don't hear you, but yeah. So again, if you
Okay,
have
38. Pasuk 38 says, V'chiyutin mayim
oh,
al zerem v'nafa mini
see what a good
blasam.
you don't realize, guys, what a genius you're learning with. I told you there would be a mayim in that, even though I don't have it here in the Gemara. You see, that's how smart I am.
Oh,
Anyway, so
okay.
what's this mayim all about? This is called hechsher. Remember, we have 7 machshirim.
Right.
And it means that if
Mhm.
something it gets is in contact with any of those 7 liquids, it's mukshal lekabel tuma, and then it will receive tuma. So again, the first pasuk, which is number 37, that says tarhu, that's where the seed was dry and it had no contact with any of the 7 liquids. And then the following pasuk, which is 38, talks about where mayim fell on the zera, on the seeds, and therefore it was machshirt, and therefore it's makabel tumah. Okay, for now we get back to our drasha. Kiderech shebnei adam motziim lizriya. What the pasuk is talking about when it says yizara, it's talking about seeds that are yizara, meaning they're taken out for planting. Okay, so what does it mean, kiderech? So what's the normal way that the Torah is specifying? Chita b'klipasa, sior b'klipasa, adoshim b'klipasa. So now we're talking about the klipos, the husks. Now the husks themselves are only shomrim. They only protect the, what shall I call it? The kernel, I guess you'd say, the kernel that is really edible. So the husk is not edible, although I don't know, today they call it bran, but anyway, it's not really edible, but it's a shomer. And the pasuk is telling me that the shomer together, the husk together with the kernel inside of it, form the shear of kibetza in order to convey tumah. Now, what about nevela? Velo shomrim letumas tumah chamura. We don't incorporate the shomrim, like for example the hide, together with the meat of the nevela in order to produce a kezayis that would make that meat nevela that would convey tuma. Minol. How do we know that? And for Tanur Rabbanan, this we derive from the pasuk bin nivlasa. So the Torah adds this stipulation with the hay at the end of benivlasa. Its carcass, its nevela. What does that mean? V'lo bi'or she'enel of kizayis basa, but not the or. The or itself, the hide, even though it is what? It's a shomer, no less than the husk in the case of the kernels, and yet the Torah says that it's not considered benivla sa, and therefore it's excluded from integrating into the kizayis to create a nevela that would convey tuma chamura, which is called tumas nevela. Okay, then. So this is where we'll stop for today on the top of Kuf Yud Ches. Okay, then. Thank you, gentlemen, for your perseverance at this late hour. I appreciate it. All too.